everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to episode 4 of today's program, which is premiering now, Pop Culture Flair for Communicating Basic Science.
And in this session, we are showcasing a few of the flash talks that for us inspired great conversations about when and how basic science intersects with popular culture, like the talk that we just saw there by Mike Witherall. So let's get this behind the scenes show started.
All right, so Ingrid is the Communications and Outreach Specialist for the National Microbiome Data Collaborative, which is a microbiome data sharing network that supports data standards and community building. And she is based out of Berkeley Lab in California.
And my other co-host here is Ashleigh Papp. She is a science storyteller with the DOE's Office of Science team and currently on detail from Berkeley Lab's bioscience area. When not writing about really cool things like quantum computing and extreme weather, she's playing outside or more often than not watching really cool films, which leads me to my next question. Ashleigh, what's your favorite science film these days? I know where you are, you get to see a lot of really cool ones.
I sure do. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, and that is a really good question, Ingrid. I think as of now, my favorite science film has got to be Fire of Love. It's a documentary about 2 volcanologists who travel the world and do a lot of cool research on volcanoes. There's also a lot of really great archival footage in that one. So what about you, Ingrid? What's your go-to science film these days?
That's a hard question for me. And when you said archival footage, that's something I really care about since I was a historian of science in my past life. And so if I think about it, I think my favorite film is kind of an old one now. It's from 2016. I'm not sure if other people on our call today watched Arrival, which is this really incredible film about a linguist who learns how to communicate with an alien species. It's a science fiction film, not exactly a science film. But one of the reasons that it really captivated me as a film is that it's very clear that the producers of the film worked with linguists to actually come up with the alien language that they used in that film. And I've always really wondered what it would be like to work with film producers to create that real world within a film and to really bring science in.
Well, funny you should mention it, Ingrid, because today we are joined by 5 of our Flash Talk presenters, as you can see in our panelist set of windows. We're going to introduce each of them, show their recorded Flash Talks, and then we're going to ask all sorts of questions about their experience communicating basic science to a general audience.
So today's session, to summarize, will be broken into 3 parts. First, we'll explore the context of these experiences. Then we'll look at the connections that connect our speakers and sort of their common experiences with their entertainment studios and presenters. And finally, you'll be able to join our conversation as well and talk about how these lessons might shape your own communication strategies. As a reminder, please add your questions to the chat off to the side, and we'll dive into as many as we can towards the end of the session.
All right, so let's get into it. Our first panelist is Gillian King-Cargile. As a communications coordinator at Argonne National Laboratory, Gillian is passionate about creating books, digital media, events, and experiences that help people explore the connections between science and storytelling. She holds a BA in film production and an MFA in creative writing. And I love this one, would like to petition Disney for an honorary doctorate in Marvel science. Gillian, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's stick to the trend. Tell us, what is your favorite science film?
Oh, from forever, Jurassic Park.
Such a classic.
Yeah, big dinosaurs, amazing things happening. And when I got to college, I did take genetics classes along with my film classes, but I lost interest when I found out we could not clone any dinosaurs. So film won out.
Fantastic. Okay, without further ado, here is Gillian King-Cargile's Flash Talk.
In Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, our heroes explore the mysteries of the quantum realm. In real life, experts at Argonne National Laboratory and across the country are researching quantum concepts that could revolutionize science, computing, and information technology. The movie release provided the perfect opportunity to bring real science to a sci-fi fantasy audience, which is already primed for quirky, quantum-y discovery. It also provided a chance to show audiences Argonne's own quantum realm. So how did our project come together? I'll explain it Ant-Man style. So I was like, check it. You ever thought about using Ant-Man to explain quantum science? And Jared was all, we got these dope quantum labs and all the researchers who are hella smart. We should make a campaign around this, yo. And Andre was all, yo, I got this cat who's stupid cute and loves being in boxes. We could totally use her to bust out some sick knowledge on Schrodinger's cat. You know, that thought experiment on quantum states? And these researchers were all, that idea's wicked cool, you know, we'll totally be in your videos. And Justin was like, let's tweet quantum facts and Ant-Man facts on social media like blah, blah, blah. And Dominic was all, I got this connection to Hollywood. So we said, let's get all up in a movie theater and bring in those dope scientists. And Disney was like, sick. And we were like, dope. And I was like, Disney, you should totally fly in Paul Rudd. And they were like, no. But it was still cool, you know? Boom. So, Argonne's super team of communicators assembled a series of events, videos, and social media posts that engaged over 3,000 people across our channels and brought over 500 people to live and virtual events. Several scientists were excited to participate in pop culture even if they hadn't seen Ant-Man. Some audiences are hungry for this type of programming, while others prefer our traditional science lectures. This kind of event plants the Argonne flag in the field of entertainment and science. Why should NASA have all the fun? Our success built trust with the Disney Marvel publicity team, leading to an invitation to partner on future science-y screenings. Choose source material and creators with a track record of success and a passion for science. Understand and respect the fandom. People will know if you get details wrong. Recruit experts who are fans or encourage pop culture prep. Create events that are mutually beneficial for you and the creators. Show them that you understand their publicity schedule and goals. At the end of the day, science and pop culture are more entangled than you think. Using pop culture as a gateway to celebrate science is a great way to share our lab's amazing research to a new audience and a new generation of science lovers. After our public lecture and Quantumania game show, Argonne's Chief Communications Officer, Leslie Crone, got some great feedback from one of the tweens who came up on stage to participate. His dad said this is both of his favorite things wrapped together, and the boy said, I really like Marvel and science. Leslie told him to stick with it. Ant-Man would be proud.
Wow. That's just amazing. I love it. And I love especially the message of to understand and respect the audience. I can't wait to dive more into our conversation. Our next video features not one, but two multimedia experts, Maegan Murray and Dawn Stringer. Maegan is a communications project manager at the Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory located at Pacific Northwest National Lab. She has more than 10 years of experience in public relations, journalism, multimedia, visual design, and photography. Dawn Stringer is a digital media specialist for the Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory, and most recently, she launched the EMSL podcast, Bonding Over Science, highlighting user projects within the lab with discussions with researchers from around the world. Dawn and Maegan, I'm going to ask you the question that we're asking everyone today. What are your favorite science fiction movies or science films? Oh, we can't hear you there. I'm not sure why. Little technical difficulty there for a second.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect, absolutely.
For me, my favorite science fiction film is Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, cool.
And then I'm definitely also on the sci-fi side. Nope is most recently my favorite, but I was thinking about it, and Independence Day is another like classic favorite of mine.
Oh,
I love the
absolutely.
Alien.
Yeah, aliens, I mean, what an interesting avenue to explain and explore our relationship to science and ourselves. So thank you, Ashleigh. Roll film.
The hit HBO series The Last of Us has taken the world by storm. In a fictionalized future, the show portrays how a type of fungus that exists in real life takes over humans and turns them into zombies. It's so popular that it's helped shed light on fungus as a whole. At the Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory, we wanted to use that to our advantage.
To capitalize on the popularity of the show, we set out to connect the show's subject matter to current EMSL research on fungal communities. EMSL specializes in basic or fundamental science in the biological, environmental, and computational spaces. But due to its highly technical nature, our research can be difficult to communicate. But by connecting our research to pop culture, audience members are attracted to the content based on their established interest. It also makes the science more approachable. At EMSL, scientists can submit proposals to access our instruments and expertise as part of a competitive selection process. By connecting our science to The Last of Us, we aim to grow the interest of established scientists as well as future scientists.
We interviewed EMSL staff scientists and users about the likelihood of a fungus taking over the world. We also asked them about how the show's popularity has piqued the public's interest on fungus research. From there, we dove into active research projects happening at EMSL, which range from how to use different fungi to degrade plastics and bio-based feedstocks for bioproducts development, to how ants are using fungi to fight pathogens, to how fungus is thriving in the Chernobyl nuclear disaster site. We crafted a multimedia campaign that would paint a visual of the research happening at EMSL, as well as captivate the interest of scientists. Our campaign was broken into several parts: an article, video clips, social media posts, an email to our user base, and a medium that would connect all the pieces together. Our new podcast titled Bonding Over Science.
Platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter offer bite-sized pieces in a format easily digestible and highly shareable by anyone, regardless of their technical understanding. The podcast and article, on the other hand, dive deeper into the technical details while still explaining the complex topics in easily understandable terms. The campaign was successful on all fronts. Our podcast had more than 120 downloads since April 10th. Collective posts on social media have had more than 209 likes and more than 40 shares. Our Instagram Reels and Facebook Stories had more than 1,400 views, as well as the article on the website has been viewed more than 140 times since April 11th.
Based on the campaign's success, we plan to continue this strategy. While it won't encompass everything we do, we find it's a worthwhile investment for growing our audience and, as a result, our future user base. It's also a fun and creative way to tell the EMSL story in a way that hasn't been done before.
Yay, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Megan and Dawn. So Chris is our next Flash Talk presenter, and Chris is the Assistant Dean for Communications at the University of Maryland's A. James Clark School of Engineering. He works with a team of communication pros to tell a story that's rooted in strategy and executed with forward-leaning tactics. So Chris, how about you? What's your go-to science film these days?
You know, I think when I submitted this, I put Back to the Future, which is fantastic, but I think actually the right answer for me is Ghostbusters. And the reason is that I have a good friend and we literally talk in Ghostbusters quotes. It's just back and forth texts in Ghostbusters quotes. So I'm with the Ghostbusters.
Love it. Well, I can't wait for something that's ahead. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and roll Chris's film.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Pender from the communications team for the A. James Clark School of Engineering at the University of Maryland. We are super excited to chat with you today and share this idea of stories without words. It's very important to us, and we would say all communications operations, that you have an idea of what it is you as a communications operation are about, that you have a vision and you have a value proposition. But we try and think about what is the larger unifying force here and how does that tie back to the college's strategic plan. And that helps us guide what it is that we do. The next level up for us is really understanding our audience and what motivates that audience to get involved with our content and, more importantly, share or take action. I think it's up to us as communicators, and this is how we see ourselves, to try and create, as we like to think of them, experiences. But an experience is something that really draws the reader in, makes them feel like they're part of it, and makes them want to pass it on. So as an example, if you look at our most recent issue of Engineering at Maryland magazine, the cover is an experience, like it's a piece of art that really tries to tell the story of what it is that the lead editorial piece is about. And we extended that online with some animation so you can see the smoke in this particular piece of art moving. So likely you're asking, how is it we create these experiences? And for us, we sort of boil it down, we try and ride waves. So first of all, we try and appeal to people's desire for personalization. One of the things that we do with our Instagram feed, as an example, is we have these takeovers where once a week the student does the storytelling. The second thing we really try and do is tie into what people know, and we do that by appealing to what's happening in pop culture. So we started this very cool video series called Ask an Engineer, and in short, Ask an Engineer looks at the way engineering is presented in pop culture and tries to talk about whether that is accurate or whether that is inaccurate in a fun, light way.
Have you ever wondered how a spacecraft travels through space? Once it leaves Earth, then what? Can you really zip and zoom through space like a fighter pilot?
Finally, we try and make science and engineering look really cool, because it is, and it deserves to be presented that way. And we do that in a couple ways. First of all, with our brand, you see it's very big, it's very visual, it uses icons. Second of all, we try and use a lot of high-speed photography. So this is an example of a spread from our magazine of high-speed photography of a fire sprinkler at work. And then we try and do some other cool things with technology. So this is a drone fly-through of one of our newest buildings on campus, the E.A. Fernandez Idea Factory. At the same time, we think a little bit about lessons learned. Don't just make something and put it out there. See what people think of it. Get feedback. Try and think about ways that can serve more than one purpose. Again, I go back to that idea about the art for the Engineering at Maryland spread at the beginning. It was a physical piece for the magazine, and it became a digital piece that moved. So hopefully that's been of help to you. We really appreciated the chance to share a little bit about what it is that we do. Engage with us further, and we're happy to talk more about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. Well, finally, speaking of ways to make science look cool, some people have been talking about Ghostbuster in the chat, and I'm very excited to say that we have an expert who's going to be talking with us shortly about that. We have James Maxwell, who is specializing in spin polarizing nuclei in solids and gases for uses as targets for nuclear physics scattering experiments. He was a scientific consultant for the 2016 Ghostbuster film, which features a replica of his helium-3 polarizer that was used in research for the EIC and Jefferson labs. So really excited to dive into this. James, what is your favorite science film?
Hi, yeah. I have 3 little kids, so right now I think my current favorite is Wall-E. It's it's like a dystopian ecological apocalypse movie for kids.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great film. I think it's a real classic as well. I love the way that they talk about sustainability and thinking about climate. All right, Ashleigh, roll the film.
Hi, I'm Dr. James Maxwell, and I'm an experimental nuclear physicist in the Polarized target group here at Jefferson Lab in Newport News, Virginia. A couple of months before I actually started my job at Jefferson Lab, while I was still a postdoc at MIT, I was approached by Professor Lindley Winslow. She was giving laboratory tours to some filmmakers, and they asked if they could see my lab. At the time, I was researching spin polarized helium-3 gas, and the apparatus I built was pretty cool looking. Here at Jefferson Lab, I have an upgraded version of that polarizer. You can see sort of here behind me. The glass cell contains helium-3 gas, which is glowing with an RF discharge. My MIT setup had copper magnetic coils, glass valves, which are even more photogenic. Anyway, I agreed to show off my toys, thinking I'd be giving a tour to film students or some local Boston movie makers. To my surprise, who actually showed up was the assistant prop master for the new Ghostbusters movie, which was filming in Boston. They were building a university lab set, the Paranormal Studies Laboratory, and what better place than MIT to get inspiration. She showed the photos from her tours to the director, Paul Feig, and he picked out my lab from the bunch. They ended up asking me to build a replica of my polarizer apparatus for the movie. So I got to work producing machining drawings, consulting with our scientific glass blower, borrowing a few choice pieces of derelict equipment from around the lab, and using all this basically helped them rebuild my apparatus on the set. With this finished, they invited me to the set for the beginning of principal photography, where I saw firsthand the incredible work of all the artists and set designers who were actually making the movie happen. I even got to chat with the actors, Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, and Kate McKinnon, to explain what my experiment was and how it worked. It was an incredible experience. After my contribution to the set, they called on me over the next several months to provide further scientific advice for props and for the movie script itself. I looked at the fantastic designs that the props teams had made for the proton packs, for instance, and I told them what each part might be if this was a real science tool that could work. As a kid, I was really inspired by the Ghostbusters movies because the science really is their superpower. You know, back off, man, I'm a scientist. So I was thrilled to be able to inject some real particle physics tools into a science fantasy movie. And in the end, I got to see my name in the movie's credits when I attended the premiere in the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Thanks very much.
Wow, this is just so neat. All of these videos have been so amazing, and I wanted to take a moment before we leap into discussion to thank our participants for sharing their craft with us. Now, for the second part of this conversation, we're going to talk about lessons learned from your experience with these production teams. So yeah, I guess we'll start with you, Gillian, specifically. How did you build trust with these entertainment studios?
Sure. I think the most important part of working with a studio or a publisher or anyone like that is showing them that you're very enthusiastic about what they do. You know, we don't want to come in and say, this was trending, and so what's Quantum Mania? What's Stranger Things? You want to come in as a fan, as an appreciator, and show them that you understand what they do. I think you also need to be very clear about what you want to do with them. So come in with an idea that shows them how you're going to use their property very clearly and what the link is to the science that your people are experts in. Another thing to do is to have those statistics ready. They're going to ask you what your audience size is, how many people you usually get at your live events, how many people you have on your social media, and that will help you tell the story of why you will be a good ambassador for their projects. I think that, you know, it's said before, and I saw it in the chat too, is that, like, definitely understand and respect the fandom. You don't want people saying things like, here's what they got wrong. Like, I want to do something about everything that's wrong with your movie. And they're going to be like, no, we worked really hard on this. So coming in with respect. But I also think the other thing is that we could be doing is cultivating relationships, like NASA has been talking in other sessions, and yeah, man, I want to be like NASA. But that long-term relationship, we're not just there to do one thing and then jump on the next thing that's trending. We want to have longer relationships with these people and with these creators.
That's really great. And again, when you mentioned that respecting the fandom, it immediately made me think of Maegan and Dawn's campaign. And again, the ways that they were looking at bringing in The Last of Us. Would you talk a little bit about the ways that you also extended your relationships out to the fandom? Maegan and Dawn?
Yeah, so we kind of approached our campaign. We wanted to be kind of multimedia, knowing that the fan base is on social media. And so we planned our content specifically so it would be beneficial for like Instagram Reels. We just launched an Instagram account this past year, which has grown pretty well. And yeah, just kind of using those multimedia tools while also kind of playing into the fact that like not everybody will have seen this show. So making sure to have that brief synopsis of what it is. And then kind of jump in immediately to the connection of our science. At EMSL, we study molecular level science, like soil science and those sorts of things. And so our studies specifically on fungal biology was a direct connection.
It also really offered us the opportunity to humanize our researchers. So the fungal biologist, Scott Baker, that we really looked to for a lot of the content on this, he first heard about The Last of Us playing the video game with his son. So it really humanized everybody involved, and they were fans too. So while they were still fans of the show, they could say, hey, this was scientifically accurate, this part. Is it going to turn into a zombie eating fungus? Probably not, but hey, it's cool that they got some stuff right.
That's really interesting. You know, Ashleigh, this reminds me of the conversations we had after watching Chris's video and thinking about audience.
Yeah, well, let's dive into the next question then, right? Because this one actually is for Chris. So in your flash talk, you said that communicators can learn how to ride the waves and connect more with their audiences. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe some unlikely or surprising insights that you and your team have learned along the way during your proverbial surfing sessions.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is really encouraging people on your team to look for trends, both in communications, and I use that term broadly, you know, marketing, public affairs, advertising, all of it, as well as like what's happening in pop culture outside of your field. So like for us in education, you know, we talk a lot about, at least on the engineering communications team, it's important to know what's going on in engineering communications, but it's also important to know like what companies are doing, what nonprofits are doing, what the government is doing, like how people are capturing and keeping people's attention, and then bring those ideas to bear. And then I think a second piece is like, then when we sit down to talk about a project, we can really say, hey, you know, I saw this in a magazine, or like I saw this in the transit ad, or, you know, I saw this when I was streaming Netflix last night, and these things really resonated with me. And then we try and pull the best ideas together. I think a second thing is like really understanding how your audience is approaching consuming information. So, you know, to be super tactical about it, we're fortunate that we have a student that works with us that does a lot of our social media. And the reason we do is like, I mean, I think I'm a young guy, but I'm not like 22, you know, I'm not 21, I'm not in school. So I'm not in the best position to like say, this is how we should say things on social. You know, somebody that's in school is in a much better position to say, this is how we say things on social. And, you know, we ran a giveaway and, you know, she thought of jokes that we wouldn't have thought of because like she's in that population. So I think a second thing is like, not just asking what your audience consumes, but like in a sense, getting your audience involved in the consumption. And then I think a third thing is, you know, looking at ways information is being communicated in addition to what the information is. You know, and the most modern example I can think of is all these immersive and generative AI technologies, you know, ChatGPT, the deal NVIDIA just made about immersive advertising, the Adobe Creative stuff that's a little bit AI. Like people like that stuff. It's cool. It's interesting. It's new. So if you can make something that's not only got good information on it, but like is delivered in a way that is modern and like stays aligned with the trends, people are going to want to watch it or view it or interact with it just because of the way it's made. And that will get your content in front of audiences you wouldn't otherwise get your content in front of.
I think that's a really great point. And again, it makes me think about something else we were considering, which was, you know, again, back to, you know, Gillian and Maegan and Dawn. What are the mediums that you've worked with that seem to bring the highest audience return?
Instagram Reels is huge right now. And also Facebook Reels. They're bringing in tons of views. So I know with the Last of Us podcast that we did short clips, and we were also promoting our article that Maegan wrote with that as well. And those short, quick to the point snippets and then redirecting to our landing pages have had a high number of viewership.
That's
I
really
would say,
interesting.
social media as well. I think we had good engagement on Twitter, and our videos, we purposely made them to be about 45 to 60 seconds, so they could be something that would be engaging, that people, as they were scrolling, would go, oh, wow, what's this from Argonne? This doesn't look like what I usually see. So that was really good. And the live events, we had a lot of success with both with the screening that we did, the pre-release screening, and with our Out Loud lecture series. Because it was something different, we got a very good response.
That's really great. James, I feel like we haven't had an opportunity to bring you in directly so far, so I want to take a moment to bring you in and say, when Ghostbusters came out after you had worked on it, what did you find? Like, did you talk to a lot of people about it in your lab, or did you also participate in any direct audience engagement?
Yeah, well, there's sort of this big gap after they make the movie before you're allowed to really say anything about, you sign all the NDAs. And so people wanted to know what I was doing, but I couldn't really say in the moment. But as the movie came out, there was definitely like lots of buzz. And so I was approached by, different media organizations. I got to go on Science Friday on NPR. So that was like, yeah, very cool. But, I'm a scientist, not a communicator, so I do my best.
But your best is very good. And again, it's very important. And so again, as we are talking about lessons learned, I guess I want to have a general question. Is there anything that you guys have tried that, doesn't seem to actually have maybe panned out in hindsight, anything that you would have done differently?
I feel like with, not to put you on the spot here, Chris, but with all of the different things that you shared in your flash talk that you and your team work on producing, right? Instagram takeovers, super cool video series about Ask an Engineer, the interactive, magazine. There's so many different things that you guys are trying. So yeah, I guess maybe if there's nothing that was clearly that wasn't worth our time. Is there one in particular out of all the different things that you've tried recently that really splashed well with your audience?
I would say, I guess I could share one that we're still trying to figure out, and I would love to hear how other people have figured this out, and one that I think we're going to do more of. So one I think we're still trying to figure out is video, for lack of a better way to describe it, that has a little bit more of a raw feel, meaning like it looks like it was shot on your phone. And everyone on in this conversation knows there are times that's the way to go. You want it to look like it's 30 seconds and you put it together on your phone, right? We haven't totally figured out how to do that in a way where there's a good balance between it feeling organic and it feeling produced. But I think to keep people involved, because they expect more of a multimedia experience just because how they consume information normally, we're going to need to do more of that. And then I think, where we've had some good success recently is that sort of like the animation you saw in the video with the smoke, moving, we've done some very quick, graphically produced short form video for social. And a quick tactical example would be that there's a competition we have every year here called Alumni Cup. It's sort of a Rube Goldberg style thing. You get $100 and you got to move something from A to B. It's awesome. Encourage you all to come. There's my marketing pitch. It's over. But in the past, we've just put up either a photo or a title card on social. And this year we did a little bit of animation with the trophy dropping. That got more engagement. So I think we'll do more of that because it's getting less expensive to produce. And I think we're in a little bit more of a groove and see that the audience responds well to it.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And again, it makes me think of the excellent film editing that we saw today and all the different videos. And someone's asked a question in the chat, which I sort of want to bring in. We're going to get to the chat shortly, but just because it seems especially germane to this conversation, would you guys be willing to talk a bit about your own backgrounds as scientists, communicators? Do you have any particular tips on where to learn things about video production?
If you ever have the opportunity to attend Adobe Max, I love that event. It's in LA. They have some awesome workshops, and it's a whole experience.
Got cut off there a bit, but I think again what we've heard was Adobe Max is a really interesting platform, a really great conference to go to. And what about you, Gillian? I think you have a background in film production, is that right?
Yes, yeah. I have a background in film production and creative writing, and so I always loved science, but I realized that I was not meant to be in labs. I didn't actually like doing the science. I liked hearing the stories about the science and sharing them and getting people excited about them. So I would say right now is a really good time to do this, even if you don't have a film background. There are a lot of things like Adobe Express, which is a free program. You know, if you're thinking of audio, there's Audacity. There's a lot of things that you can get into and do very well with them, even if you're not an expert. At Argonne, we are very fortunate to have an amazing creative services team. So we've got a staff of experts that I can come in to with my crazy ideas and like, I want this to look like Ant-Man. And they're like, oh yeah, we can do that, no problem. So that's also very helpful. But I agree that there are times when, you know, you want this to be an on the phone kind of lo-fi version, because that's what people want to see on those platforms, or that's what they're used to. So I think having that flexibility with your storytelling tools is also really important.
I would also just throw out there, I totally agree with everything that's said. There's a lot of good professional development opportunities out there, but like, here's your best friend, you know? I would also say, like, if you don't have, like, as an example, if you don't have the Runway ML app, get it. It's free, right? It's for making basically AI video. You know, I took a video of my kid doing karate the other day and I turned it into claymation myself. And yeah, and I am not a trained video person at all, but I guess the point I'm making is that, you know, the audience that we all are communicating to, like, they're using these things and they're figuring it out. So professional development, absolutely agree. But in addition, you know, get some of these tools and just tinker around with them on your phone, you know, and or your computer or your, you know, your tablet or whatever, and just you'll get ideas, and then you can bring those ideas into the workplace.
I love that. I just made a note of that app. Did you as well, Ingrid?
Yep, I did. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's lovely. Again, I am someone who believes it's always about, you know, bringing in past experiences and using those to move forward and to think about, you know, bringing in different collaborators from different worlds. Someone just suggested on the chat a while back about collaborating with or reaching out and learning more about the scientific and entertainment exchange, which I highly recommend doing. This, I'm going to put their chat in the URL in the chat. They're a wonderful group based out of LA, run through the National Academy of Sciences, I believe, which do a great job bringing together scientists and communicators. They host regular forums. They're wonderful. And as we're wrapping up our second section here and thinking about experiences writ large, I just wondered if, again, this is more pivoted towards James, Maegan, and Dawn and Gillian, but thinking about the future after working with the team on the Ghostbusters movie set or on a campaign about the likelihood of a zombifying fungus, I'm sorry, how has that specific experience influenced your ideas about communication strategy? What are you doing moving forward, if we can ask? Yeah, James, yeah, you know.
Sure. Well, you know, it's not every day that Hollywood comes knocking on your door. So I think the thing that I really learned and took from it is that you sort of always have to be ready, right? It's very easy, particularly as a scientist, to get buried in your work, but you have to be sure not to lose the ability to relate what you're doing and why it's important to everyone, so that when the opportunities present themselves, you're there and you can act on it and share what you're doing to everyone.
And I would add, like, we do basic science obviously at EMSL, and a lot of our stuff is really hard to understand and really intricate. And so kind of to James' point, the more you can make it into more understandable terms to communicate these complex topics, the larger audience you're going to get. In our case, we're trying to get more people interested in submitting proposals to access our facilities so that they can do groundbreaking science. And so a good way to do that is to relate your science to the pop culture general public so that it will automatically get amplified to those specific sciences that are interested in your area.
Yeah, and I think one of the best things that came out of our campaign was showing people that we could do this and still be true to the science. And so I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes to the possibility of what might be next, both with pushing the form of our videos to be more in line with a more modern and exciting feel, to also just like, oh, what is the next movie? That's what people keep asking me, like, what's coming out? Are we going to do the Marvels? Like, what's next? So I think that makes it really exciting that we energized people at our lab to look for these opportunities.
That's fantastic. That's such a great testament to all of the work that Gillian, you and your team do, and to everyone here. Thank you so much for all of the thoughtful responses. I think we could probably sit around as a group and talk science and film for much longer than just the short amount of time that we have today. But before we wrap up our session and bid everyone adieu, we are going to open it up to the community, to everyone on the call today. So please, I think there are some questions that have come through the chat already. If you have more, please continue to fill them out here. And then also know that the session following this one will be a virtual booth fair where all of the fine folks on Space Call, plus a good couple handfuls more, who also submitted really awesome flash talks. Everyone will be in their virtual booths. You will be able to watch 11 films total, or well, short films, and interact via a live Q&A with each of the presenters. So if any of the questions don't get answered in this session, head over to the virtual booth fair and pop them into those live chats. But Ingrid, how's the chat coming along? Do we have any good questions?
People are chatty, which I think is really great. And our first question comes in from Jeremy Snyder at Berkeley Lab, who asks specifically to Gillian, how much do you budget for a project like this? And how many people were actually on your team for filming, production, and editing?
Yeah, budget, I would say, is a little wishy-washy. That's not my area. So I can give you some general ideas. So overall, for the full campaign, all the way from our Twitter campaign through our videos, our live events, and our C2E2 appearance, which is like the Chicago Comic-Con, basically. We had Leah Hessla and I were two of the people who were really pushing it. And I think we had a core group of about 5 people who pushed things forward. Our videographers, we have about 3 to 4 videographers who worked on different aspects of it, from production to different aspects of producing it. The videos, the short videos, were around $2,000 each to produce. So, you know, I'm newer to the National Lab System, so I don't know how that compares with other people's budgets in terms of this, but the lab did see it as a priority for getting good science in front of people and did put a nice budget behind it.
Excellent, thank you. And next question is, I think a really good one, actually, they're all very good questions, but it's one that I thought of, actually, by Karen Jerome from NREL, who says, a question that often comes up for me when connecting to pop culture: are there copyright concerns or rules to be aware of playing off of a popular movie or show? And I would direct this first to James, who I noticed when he showed his video had done a great job of making sure that he was showing us pre-approved stills from production. James, can you talk about this?
Sure. I think you always have to be careful. And so the stills that I use were given to me for personal use, you know, after the movie was over. There are professionals, of course, on the set taking pictures of me and my set pieces. So I was given permission to use those for my personal use. Yeah, copyright is scary. So I think the first impulse always has to be to look for permission. The second impulse is fair use is fair use. If you're not using something for, for monetary gain, you're usually allowed to use stuff, but I'm not a lawyer, sorry.
I would agree with that. And one thing I have learned in my own explorations of copyright is always ask early. Ask at least, if you can, a good year or several months before you actually need to. And so Andrea has a question for Chris next, which I think is great. It's all about collaboration. Andrea asks, how do you cross-pollinate with other schools at UMD?
We're very collaborative. The university overall is a little bit like the US in that the central office of marketing and communications is the federal government, and then the different schools are the states. But we do all that we can to look for opportunities to collaborate and work together. And then B, we have the folks in my role across campus. We have a regular venue where we share best practices, talk about things that are working for us, very similar to what we're all doing here today. Talk about pain points with marketing and communications and how we solve them. One of the, like, not a major innovation here in what I'm saying, but like one of the things we found is that if we can work together, we're more likely to get our content in front of a wider audience than we would individually. So that's how we work.
Okay, excellent. And also, this is a great question that comes from Jamie Reedy about conversations and cross-pollination. Specifically, again, going back to thinking about working with studios, Jamie asks, do you have any advice for how to start conversations pre-production, capitalizing on James's experience with consulting on the production of accurate science depiction? How would you recommend starting conversations about getting accurate science content included in these potential blockbusters? And I will also say, Gillian, would love your thoughts. You mentioned that you knew someone or somebody had a contact, maybe at Disney. So yeah.
Somebody always knows somebody, right? So I think there's two parts to that. One is showing that your lab or your organization is here for this kind of conversation. So putting yourself out there in that sphere will show people that, oh, I could go to them, or I've got questions, and they will be accessible. I think, like we said in the chat, the Science and Entertainment Exchange does a really great job of that. So they work to connect filmmakers to scientists. That's their job. But they also do these great public outreach webinars and YouTube videos. So I would challenge all of us to say, oh, how are we going to make a concerted effort to be in that space and be available? How can we do something like this, the Science and Entertainment Exchange? We're a closed lab, but how do we open our doors and make that happen? But the other side of that would be, looking at people on your team. If you have this little crazy idea, like, hey, I think we should use Ant-Man, for quantum, what are we going to do? Who else is in our network? And say those quiet ideas loud, because people go, oh, I know the publicist for this, or I went to high school with Paul Rudd, and it kind of snowballs, and you get people on board, and you find all these crazy connections that you didn't know that you had.
Oh, I would love to know more about the Paul Rudd connection there. But what I will say is, again, I will emphasize the Science and Entertainment Exchange. Part of their job is to literally connect scientists and filmmakers. So if you're trying to connect with folks in Hollywood, they're really lovely people to talk to at the exchange. Absolutely, I would highly recommend reaching out to them. James, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I'll say one thing. If you're a scientist, or if you have scientists who are interested in that, you can sign up for the exchange and put yourself on their registry of people who can be contacted.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I think she covered it perfectly. The way I was involved was because of, Lindley Winslow at MIT, a new professor, knew somebody from her postdoc days at UCLA. So there's some networking involved. So you have to be ready for when that comes. But I don't know how to actually call them up and say, hey, look how cool this is. I mean, every scientist across the country has got something awesome to share, right? And so I think that's, you have to be ready to know when the filmmakers are interested in what you've got.
I mean, absolutely. And speaking of being ready and ready to go, I think our last question here is from Karen McNulty at BNL, who says, "How did these specific communication efforts fit into or compete with your day-to-day responsibilities?" And I will throw that to Maegan or Dawn. Any suggestions?
We kind of just fit it into like our workflow. As Dawn mentioned, we just launched our new podcast, Bonding Over Science. And so we wanted a way to not only amplify that platform, but also kind of mix it into like amplifying our science at large. So every month with our podcast episode, we do an article that runs with it, some video content that runs as Instagram Reels, and then we pull some of the audio snippets from the podcast directly. So I think it was just kind of like pivoting a little bit and then building in kind of some padding to our overall work structure. And I think that worked really well because you don't end up spending a tremendous amount more hours than what you normally would.
And it was a challenge because this was a new project and we didn't know exactly, okay, how much promotion do we want to do on the video side, on Twitter, whatever. So it was kind of learn as you go. And then each one, it gets easier to budget that time and just to fit it into your daily tasks. But there was definitely a couple long days and maybe a couple Saturdays I popped in to finish some Instagram Reels. So there was definitely some growing pains there.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think we have to wrap things up, everyone. So that officially brings our behind the scenes of science films to a close. Thank you again to all of our fantastic panelists for sharing your insight and joining us today. Thank you.
And thank you too to our audience for asking such fabulous questions. Really appreciated the conversation that was happening in parallel in the chat as well. Please join us at the virtual Flash Talk booth, which is happening now on the event platform, which is where you can watch all of the amazing videos that were submitted to us. And yes, there are many more.
So those links have been added to our chat now. You'll have a chance to interact with these fine folks as well as many others. So please do pop over there in the next chunk of time. Otherwise, we will see everyone back here in Zoom land at 3 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye, Ingrid.